All right, this is going to be a little tutorial on one of the extended body mayflies that I tie. I like this one a lot for a couple of reasons. That's kind of what we're going to have at the end of it here. I'm going to tie this one parachute style. I like this one because you don't really need to do too much prep work. I think it's pretty easy. You don't have to go and take a needle and build the extended body and then transfer it or anything like that. Not that that is particularly difficult, but it is an extra thing. This is all just, one step, a lot easier. And what I think is really important too is that you're using a buoyant material for the extended body. So I'm a big fan of this one. You can mix up the colors, the sizes, all kinds of things for whatever pattern or whatever fly you're targeting here. I fish a lot of PMD dries. I fish down in the Delaware quite a bit, and the sulfurs go all summer. I'm off for the summer. I'm a teacher, so I go down there quite a bit and fish the sulfur hatch probably 3-4 times a week. So any kind of PMD imitation that's a little bit different for those fish, because those fish are ridiculous down there. You got to find something a little different for them to look at, and this works pretty well. So here in the vise, I've got a size 14 emerger hook. It's a little bit bigger than what I use down there. You tend to use a 16, but 14s would be a little bit better for the video. I've got a pale PMD-ish kind of light yellow A-dot veevus for my thread. And I'm just going to get that started behind the eye, get a few wraps in so I can secure that, and we'll come in and get that tag end out of there. So I'm going to make a few more wraps, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to take the hackle that I'm going to use for this fly, and you can see how you kind of have you got the business end of the hackle there. That's really the sweet spot where all of the sizes of the barbs are the same. And then you work your way down towards the base of the feather, and you see how the barbs get much longer, and then you get into this webby stuff down here at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is where the barbs start getting a little bit longer than the size that I want, I'm just going to work my way down. And let's just rip all that right off of there. Let's just get all the way down to the bare quill. Get everything out of there. Just rip all them barbs off. Get down to the bottom. You really got to kind of squeeze. If you have any little rogue fibers left over, just kind of snip those off. Got one little guy right there, and that looks pretty good. So I got this long stretch of just bare quill here before I get into the feather, and I don't really need all of it. I'm just going to take a good chunk of it, make sure that I have enough for my tie-in point, and then take the rest, about that long, and that's too long too, but it doesn't matter. I'm just going to come in here with my scissors, just snip that right off. So what I'm left with is the bottom end of the quill, and see how it's got that natural little curve to it? We're going to use that. Before I tie this in, what I'm going to do is I got a brown and an orange marker here, and I tend to kind of color in that butt end a little bit. You don't really need to, but it's kind of cool. You can color in what would be like a little egg sac, and or just kind of color it in brown. This one I'm going to color orange for an egg sac. Not really because I think that these PMDs have orange egg sacs, but they do have orange eyes. So I tend to think that sometimes just throwing in a little orange there on these will stir a little activity in the fish. If I do like a Hendrickson or a March Brown or something like that, I'll do the brown. But for the PMDs, I do like to mix in a little bit of orange. So we're going to kind of flip that around, measure out what we want for a length. You don't need it too long, and that looks probably about good right about there. I'm going to grip that on the sides so that it doesn't roll around on me. Get a couple of tight wraps there to kind of get that secured. I went a little hard there. I don't want to screw up that natural bend. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you tie it in to where that's sticking up, and if it rolls on you, you'll kind of lose that, which is what just happened to me there. That's kind of why I hold it on the side there. Try to get some wraps in before you really kind of pinch it down. That looks like that's going to be kind of where I want it. So once you see that your thread wraps are kind of pulling that down where you don't want it, you've tied enough of it on there, and you can start taking your thread and running it underneath so that we can kind of build up a little bit of a base under that. And just kind of pull that up, get a couple of those wraps nice and tight under there. That'll keep that body up at the angle we want. All right, and that's kind of what we're looking for. So we're going to come in here, we're going to snip that off, and we're rolling right along here. All right, next thing we want to do, if I can find it here on this mess of a desk, I'm actually a clean desk kind of guy. Never really jumped into that world of messy fly tying desks. I don't know what we're doing here. I can't imagine that. All right, so what I've got here is I've got a spade hackle. I get these from Nature's Spirit, and they're pretty good. They're just little, kind of like a little tailing pack, but the fibers on this are nice and stiff, and they work great for this pattern. You don't need to have the spade hackle. CDL will work really well. Another thing that'll work really well are the fibbits. So there's quite a few things here that are going to work pretty well. As long as they're stiff fibers, you'll be in good shape. And on that note, I kind of just dropped those. Yeah, let me pull 3 more off. So I'm just going to kind of come down and pluck 3 little fibers off of here. 3 more, because I just immediately dropped the ones I had. You got that little base there. I'm going to come in and just kind of trim the crap off the butt ends of these. So with these relatively aligned, just kind of measure out how long you're going to want that tail sticking off. And that's probably about good right there. And then see what happened? I went back in. I took them off the short end of the stem there, so I'm going to have to do my next step right now because I don't have enough room to tie those in. So, all right, so I was going to do this anyway. So we're just going to take a little hitch knot there, get that cinched in. We're not going to cut our thread or anything. That's really just to save our work, and we're going to do something a little weird here. It's going to be a little awkward. We're going to take our hook and we're going to flip it around, and we're going to put it in our vise backwards. So get that cinched in on the other side. It's always a little awkward to put it in like this, but no big deal. That might have even kind of screwed up my focus a little bit. That's better. All right, so now that we're kind of on the other side here, we're only going to be wrapping onto the quill. You don't want to wrap onto the hook when the hook is in there backwards. It doesn't make any sense. Try to do it once or twice and you'll see exactly why. But what's cool about this is the bottom end of this quill definitely has some rigidity to it. It's not completely rigid, but it is rigid enough so that when you're tying, if you apply the right amount of pressure, not too much, not too little, you can just wrap thread right onto it without a problem. So I'm just going to treat the quill that I have on there just like the shank of the hook, and I'm just going to wrap thread right directly onto it. And I'm going to take these tail fibers and I'm going to flip them over the other direction. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to kind of measure out how long I want them. And that's probably about good right there. Hold them in place with a nice loose wrap because you don't want them to roll around on you. Just take a couple of loose wraps, get them to where they're going to stay on there. Make sure they're still on top, and then just continue to make your way up. You can support that quill with your fingers a little bit as you make your way up towards the tip. But whether you support it or not, you should be able to wrap that pretty easily. The only bummer is when you run out of thread and you have to kind of pull down more. Just make sure you secure it. And we want to kind of get going back the other direction here. And don't let that double back onto itself. Now, here's where you can make a decision. If you want, you can just continue to wrap thread around the quill. No problem doing that. Or you can do what I'm going to do and lightly dub your thread and cover that with a little bit of a dubbing noodle, which is what I'm going to do. Doesn't really matter, obviously, if you dub the noodle. It's going to give it a little bit of extra buoyancy, but the quill itself is buoyant. It's nice and hollow, and when you're leaving the butt end of the quill intact, you know, you're not opening it up or anything for water to get in there. It's going to be a nice buoyant piece of the stem. So you're good with that, not to mention the dubbing, the hackle, the post we're going to tie in. So you got a lot of buoyant materials that are going to keep this fly afloat, no problem whatsoever. So if you want to just go over it a few times with some thread, then you're going to be just fine if you do that. I kind of like to dub it. It just makes the body a little bit more uniform if your thread doesn't exactly match your dubbing. So I'm just going to come in here with a really thin dubbing noodle, and I'm going to cover that quill with it. I get about as much dubbing on there as I can. And we're going to come in, we're going to make some wraps here around the base just to make sure we can make that a little more rigid. And then once your dubbing starts applying, we're going to make our way up and try to support that the best you can. And remember, you want just the right amount of pressure. Not too much, not too little. Too little and it'll kind of unravel. Too much and you'll just bend the whole thing towards you. So you got to be kind of careful. And that went pretty well. Nice, good, perfect. All right, so the only other thing I'm gonna do is when you pull these fibers off of the quill, sometimes they're stuck together. So I just want to make sure that I'm separating the tail fibers, and we're good there. You can separate them a little more if you want. You can also run a little piece of thread in there and kind of keep them splayed out. I don't really do that because, I mean, when a mayfly is on the water, I don't feel as if their tails are really all that splayed out at that point anyway. So, you know, it's nice for for tying it, but their tails sit right on the water just like our materials, so that'll be just fine. All right, so once we're done with the extended body, let's pop this hook out of here and flip it back around, and we can start tying like a normal human being again. It's so awkward when that hook is backwards, but if that's the worst thing you're dealing with on any given day, then you're doing pretty good. All right. So a couple of tight wraps, just get everything kind of locked in and done here. All right, next order of business, we got to get the post set up. So I'm going to use some of this Parapost here in white from Hairline. This is what I use for a lot of my posts. And I'm just going to, I don't need the whole thing, so let's take a strand of this, chop that right in half. They give you a ton of this stuff too. I bought this package a long time ago, and I tie a lot, and I still got a good amount left. So I'm just going to take this, and I'm just going to loop it underneath, pull it up, latch it onto my thread right there. Actually, I want to move that down a little bit. I don't want that so close. I'm just going to fill in that ramp a little with some thread. Right about there is where I want it. So you're going to loop this underneath. You don't really need it perfectly even because we're going to cut the top off anyway. And we're going to come down with 1, 2, 3 tight wraps. And then we're going to start wrapping around the base to build our post. On the bottom, I'm going to hold that tight and make sure I get some really nice, tight, securing wraps. That'll kind of set the foundation for the rest of it. There we go. I tie this fly angrily because I know I'm going to go down and fish for a bunch of fish in the Delaware. They're just going to irritate me. I got a love-hate with that system. During the summer when a lot of other places warm up, it's a nice little option. Getting a little busy though, getting a little too busy. I'm going there and not loving the amount of people, but what are you gonna do? So we're gonna come back in here with our dubbing, get this covered up. Don't have to be super precise with this, and I'm just gonna kind of build a little bit of a back taper here, kind of tapering it from the back to the front. Once I get about similar size where there's not much of a separation with that extended body and it looks like it's all flowing nice and evenly, I'll keep that going towards the front. And before I dub the front, I'm going to come in here with my feather, and I'm going to do this kind of backwards. I like to tie with what they call the shiny side down. I feel like that's the color and the features of the feather, and that's what I want down and what I want the fish to see. So, and I also think that, I mean, I know this is kind of nonsense, but it's that outside of the feather that's repelling any water. And listen, I know obviously water's getting back in there, but if that's what is the waterproof part or the water resistant part, I want that facing the water. So with the feather looking at me, understanding that I'm going to flip this around and tie it down upside down, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it the dull side facing me, and then the top part of the feather, I'm just going to pull some of those fibers off. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because my first wrap is going to be wrapped against that side of the barb. So I always take a little layer of those barbs off, and I'm just going to wrap this onto the front of the fly with a few wraps, and right when I get to the post, I'm just going to pull that up to size it, and then I'm just going to go right up the post and secure it. And this is how I tie all my parachutes, so you know, if you're tying a parachute Adams or anything else parachute style, this is a really, really good technique. Slip in here, get that off. So for the last little leg of this, we're just going to come in here with some dubbing. Get this front part dubbed up. Let's see, get that secured. So we'll start here at the eye. Move our way back. We're going to taper it. Try to get everything all kind of uniform. And then what we'll do is we'll take this right out of the vise, angle it down, and then that way you can just come in. Let's get the thread out of the way. You can come in here and wrap your hackle a lot easier. So we're just going to start it here. And this is kind of the fun part of tying these, because you get a nice platform with that nice even post where you can just wrap hackle, and it's just kind of cool watching it take shape as it completely breaks and unravels. So we'll just do that again. That was a little bit of a bummer. That was a good wrap too. That looked nice. So we'll just come back in, redo the same thing. Surprised that happened. I don't usually break hackle. This isn't old either. It's not like it's old and brittle, but I don't know. It happens. So we'll just come in underneath. Try not to gather too many tail fibers or hackle fibers or anything like that. Get it secured. Cut that out of there. Get rid of any of those little extra fibers. And we're going to whip finish this right on the post. Get that closed off. Pinch, oops, get out of there. And then the final step, let's just come in here and snip off that post. Let's reposition it in the vise, and that is it. Little extended body PMD. Bunch of different ways to tie an extended body. I've always been a big fan of this because it's real simple And that piece of quill that you use is also very buoyant, so you get that little added bonus there. And it's one of the types of extended bodies that I tie and fish quite a bit, and it's pretty straightforward and easy. Switch up the sizes, colors, match whatever bug you're trying to imitate, and it's a solid pattern. So throw up any questions or anything in the comments.